Hello, welcome to the June 2nd, 2023 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream. If you have not attended a live stream before, how it works is you can submit questions via email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. We've been having some problems getting the emails forwarded to me, so I'm sorry if I've missed some. Or you could just simply ask your questions in the live chat. When asking questions, if you could specify which version of Cubase that you're using, so whether it's Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro, or other Steinberg programs. If you could also specify which level of the program you're running, so if it's version 10, 10.5, 11, or 12, in which operating system, that information is always helpful. My ability to answer questions in a real-time manner can soon be eclipsed, and I'll try my best throughout the live stream to catch up. But if we could try to avoid, if you don't see an immediate response to your question, if we could try to avoid asking the same question repeatedly, because that would just kind of slow down the whole process, that would be appreciated. We should have a index of all of the topics covered in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. Several hours after the live stream completes, I'll take a quick dinner break and go back and do the index. And if you wanted to search for topics covered in previous live streams, you could go to Club Cubase, or you go to cubaseindex.com and do a search there. There's over 25,000 different topics that have been covered in the last 3 years of live streams. And we want to thank Jan from Stockholm, who I think is on the live stream, for creating that website. We have two people that serve as moderators. So we want to give special thanks to Agent K and to Jazz Dude. They're not Steinberg employees. They just do this to make it a better environment and a better live stream, and we appreciate our efforts. We'll give Jazz Dude also credit for his tireless efforts in the Cubase Nation Discord channel, which is a wonderful resource of information for Steinberg users. So, and as we do this, so once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, which is the United States Steinberg distributor, and I'll be the host of the live stream today. I'm presenting live from Alexandria, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. area. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us exactly where you're from. It's always wonderful to see people throughout the whole world. It was great to see so many people on our Zoom meetup after Tuesday's live stream, and it was wonderful to hear so many amazing stories from our guest Ted Perlman on his work, with Manhattan Transfer, and Brian Wilson stories, and Burt Bacharach. So there's a lot of wonderful insights that Ted was able to share. So, all right, so with that, we'll go ahead and get started with questions. Okay, so Omar Diaz asks, hi Greg, can you please show me how to properly quantize MIDI on a piano track? Do I need to use the metronome all the time? So you don't have to use a metronome all the time. So there's kind of two schools of thought. One is if you're recording to a metronome, that you could just quantize the piano tracks normally. Often if we have a piano piece, we may run into different situations where maybe the piano is speeding up and slowing down kind of intentionally in a musical manner. So let's say if I wanted to do something like this. So if we turn on our metronome now. So you can see that this performance isn't really aligned with the metronome. So we could quantize it and move parts around to the metronome if we wanted it to do that. But we could also take the opposite approach and have the metronome follow the performance. So I'm going to come over here and just say, let's get to our tempo detection, analyze. And as we do this, we can now just come over and just now we have kind of the grid, the tempo set to the piano performance, right, directly at that point. So if you want to correct the timing of a MIDI performance, that's when it's really good to use quantizing if you're perhaps recording to a grid. But if and you could just do that by hitting the letter Q, you would set the quantize value here, and you could open up a quantize panel preset. But if you wanted if you intentionally had like maybe a solo piano performance where it's going to change the time, intentionally for musical sense, to make it more musical, then you could do the tempo detection and have the tempo follow the music and still have it aligned to grid, and that could help clean up the notation as well. So if you wanted to actually move the events to the grid, then quantize it, or you could do a tempo detection and have the grid be kind of derived from the actual performance. So depending on what your intention is, either way is a perfectly great approach to do it. All right, wonderful to see Jazz Dude. To see he's posting a video about the MIDI modifiers that Dom did. All right. All right, and we see Jan from CubaseIndex.com. We see Benny from Sweden. We see Jeff Stanton says, greetings from London. Your help with the montage question last week has helped me with so many issues I was having. So thanks again. Easy when you know how, isn't it? Yeah. So one of my blind friends who's kind of an audio guru, one of his great sayings that I often steal and don't give him credit for, Greg Lukens, is like you could be one mouse click away from happiness. So. Okay, so Jeff has another question. Just says, I'm using Monogram, Creative Console with Cubase. The pots and buttons all work, zoom, etc., start, stop, etc. But when faders, but faders won't control volume, expression, etc. in orchestral plugins. Any ideas? So generally, when you're doing something like that, if you have those set up for, like in a MIDI remote. So if I wanted to come over here, we could say, okay, now I could have this device set up as a MIDI remote. And that's pretty typical. Now, many times, and the intention of having like the MIDI remote could be for zooming, for, editing parameters that we want to work with, transport. So we could come over and move these, send a MIDI message from our fader box or your was it the Monogram Creative Console. So we could have these just set up, and these will transmit MIDI information, and then we could assign these MIDI these faders that we could think of the language as MIDI. So these faders are responding to MIDI, and then we could assign what function these particular faders do, either in a generic remote or in the MIDI remote setting. So if I wanted this to do my focus quick control 1, I could just apply the mapping, and this will work on my quick control 1 for whatever track or instrument or plugin I'm on. Now once that's done, the MIDI communication we could think of it as like the interpretation language. So incoming MIDI data at this point is coming in, and then we're remapping it for a particular function. So let's say my quick control 1. So if you wanted to use it with orchestral instruments, what you want to do is not to use the actual MIDI remote. You just need to set up the device itself, and often the devices will be set up where you could just say, instead of using this particular device for my MIDI remote, I just want to have this do MIDI CC data. So generally most of the devices will spit out MIDI CC data. So we'll come over here to our setup, and let me just go to my settings here, and I'm going to just disable this script so we could so I'm going to Come right over here. I'll just trash it for now. Okay, I'm going to disable the control surface. Okay, so now when we come over and I move my fader, what I could do is just go onto a MIDI track. Let's go to the MIDI inserts, and then you can go to like a MIDI monitor. So now as I move, this fader is controller. I move fader 1, that's spitting out CC11. This is spitting out CC3, CC7. So at this point, we want to just set up within the device itself what MIDI continuous controller is being spit out. So if you wanted that to do, volume or expression or modulation, you probably have a bit of maybe a software control panel or within the hardware itself where you could set to see exactly what MIDI CC message you're transmitting. So that's what you do there. So, Cubase will accept whatever MIDI CC is being done. So you don't have to do any setup. You would do that in the controller itself to transmit the various MIDI CC values. All right, wonderful to see Robbie Bowling from Dallas. Glad he can make it today. We have Spike Williams from the proud Valley of Rhondda in Wales. Thanks for being here. Okay, wonderful to see Sable Winters. She's like number 13. Always wonderful to see the illustrious Jean-Marie Horvat on. All right, and he's using Nuendo for a new Robin Thicke record. Jean-Marie will be our celebrity engineer today. All right, we have John Costigan from Kenosha, Wisconsin. It was great to see you on the Zoom meetup. All right, so we have just a question. It says, I'm using Cubase 12 Pro 0.5 on Windows 10. When automating on touch mode, the fader is not going back to the value which it was on. Okay, so let me just come over and we'll just set up some automation. Okay, so I'm just going to take this bass part and solo it. Okay, so I'm going to put my automation into touch mode here. So now when let's say I put in my value, I'm going to automate. So we'll click on W and R. So we'll automate. All right, so as soon as I let go of the fader, that's when our automation had stopped directly there. All right, and I'm just going to okay, so it says when automating in touch mode, the fader is not going back to the value which it was on. So make sure that sometimes we'll see, this particular, usually when I hear something like this is when someone's doing like a quick, automation touch up. So they come over here and they let go and it's not returning to a particular value because there is no value for it to return to. All right, so let's say at this point at the very end, I have an automation point here. So so at this point when I do my automation, and let's say I just have we'll just set kind of a normal value here. So since there is a point and I automate, we'll zoom in here. It goes directly back. As soon as I let go of the fader, it goes right back because otherwise there's no point that it knows to actually return to that particular value. Now, what some people will do in the automation panel is just choose to write to start and end. So if let's say if I erased all the automation on this particular project, now I could just move the fader, and this will write in values at the end and at the beginning. So now if I just do automation, you could just have values written in, but if there's no value for it to return to, so now if I have like that point there, as soon as I let go, it goes right back to the value because it has something to return to. So, make sure that you have an automation point towards, later, because if there's no value, it doesn't know what to actually return to. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, so we see question from Orly says, when you invert an audio track, what happens to the audio? Does the waveform turn upside down? All right, so there's kind of two different invert functions. So one of them would be where we could invert the phase. So let's say if I want to duplicate this particular track, and we'll zoom in on both of these tracks. Okay, so now that we've duplicated this track, I'll make this one just kind of the same size, and we choose to invert phase directly here. What that does is it kind of like the parts in the audio waveform that go up will go down. So sometimes if you're recording like, a guitar amp and you're using two different microphones, how the audio waveform kind of vibrates through the air we could think of this as a representation of the vibrations in the air. And if one microphone captures it, slightly later, like out of phase, that's when you could just come over here and flip the phase so that these waveforms will be aligned and the frequencies aren't canceling each other out. So it's not that it turns it upside down, but it will invert kind of the phase of the particular file. Now, another invert function is in the selection. So we go to, so if I have this track selected and I say, let's go to select and invert, that would, unselect that track and select everything else. But I have a feeling it's going to be maybe the invert phase. So, so what that does is, again, let's see if we can find an example here. We often see it on snare tracks. So many times when we look at snares, we can see our snare top and our snare bottom. So to do this, you may want to just do a quick inversion. And if you notice that it sounds fuller, then that's a good indication that the two microphones are in phase and not canceling each other out. All right, so we have St. Rama JL on. We see Brian Sawyer from Crystal Coast of North Carolina. And we have St. Rama's from Zambia. Thanks for joining us. All right, Larry B is joining us from Wasaga Beach today. Glad you can make it. We have Matt Elder from Toronto. All right, Alexander Whitegasser is joining us from Austria. Thanks for being on. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, how to remove all the plugins from the mix windows. All things remain untouched, but only remove the plugins. Okay, so let's come over here and say we have some plugins on our mix window. All right, So we'll go to our insert view. I'll just go ahead and add some inserts here. All right, so say if we wanted to, if you wanted to bypass all the plugins, you could just click here at the very top, and that would bypass them all. And let's see if we can, if I have like all of my channels selected here, I'm going to select these particular channels, and let's see if I go to Q-Link, if I get rid of slot 1 or slot 2, we could get rid of all the slots like that. So we could do one slot at a time. Let's see if there's a better approach maybe with the logical editor. Okay, so if I have these all selected, let's see if there's an init on the effects chain presets. Or default. Okay, so let's say if I'm here, I could save an effects chain preset, and I'll just call this default, or we'll call it empty. And so I have these tracks selected, and I'm going to, with quick link turned on, let's come over here and load an effects channel track, and we'll select empty. All right, it doesn't do that across all of them. So the best bet may be to, just come over here and just take each of the 16 sends, but we'll try, I'll see if we can maybe remove it with logical editor. We'll give that a shot. I've never tried this before, but we'll give it a shot. So see if we could do our container type maybe as track, and MIDI type is maybe equal to effect. Yeah, so I think it might have to be just kind of done, while in Q-Link, just removing slot 1, slot 2. So if you drag it to an empty space, that will get rid of it. But I can play around with it if you want to send me an email or send me a message over Facebook. And it's great to see you on, Patrick. Glad you could join us today. All right, we have Razel joining from Denmark. All right, so you see Ferrod just asked, Cubase, you have an update where you can save your I.O. It disappears and you have to rewire all of your I.O. again. So you could just simply come over here and let's go to let's say your audio connections. So if all you have to do is just come over here and save presets for your inputs. You have presets, outputs. You can go to, and when we go to our different external effects and external instruments, all you'd have to do is come over here and add them to the favorites. So if you once you do this, you could say add to favorites, and then all you had to do is just go to your favorite list directly here, and that will retain all the different settings. So you can just simply save it, and you could also, once you have everything set up, is save your profile, and then you could import the profile, and all those I/O settings will be preserved in your profile. So it's pretty easy to do. All right, so Larry B just says, apologies if this is a repeat. Can you please quickly review the Halion Sonic upgrade in the latest patch? Since the upgrade, I get an error. Audio files are missing. Can I go back to Halion Sonic SE? So, I don't think I've done the latest patch here to, I think it's 7.01 for Halion Sonic. But I think when you do the Halion Sonic update, if I'm not mistaken, I was going to be doing it over the weekend, that it also has the content sets that need to be updated as well. So make sure that you have the content sets updated to match the latest version. All right. All right, so we see Soren from Sweden. Thanks for joining us today. We see Spike Williams wishing Sable Winters well. And we have Stefan also from Sweden. We have our very loyal Swedish contingent. All right, we have Peter from Montreal. Glad you could join us today. All right, we have Captain Energy Music checking in from near Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, not too far from where I am. Glad you can make it today. Okay, so we see Drazi Eternal says, dang, I knew I should have wrote my question down yesterday. Now I can't think of it. So maybe keep watching. It'll, maybe something will trigger your memory. Okay, so we have a question from Orly, who just asked, can you revert a track to its original state before the editing? So a lot of times, anytime that you're doing editing, whether it's just like, a particular audio event and we come over here and do edits, you can go to your edit history and, just scroll right back and this will be kind of a global undo history. If I'm doing if I know I'm doing a lot of extensive editing and I would maybe want to go back to the original, like maybe if I'm doing lots of vocal tuning and stuff like that, what I do is just duplicate the version, and so you just kind of click in a name, you'll see we'll make a new track version. So we'll duplicate the version, and with this I'm just going to call it, edits. So at this point, I could do all of my horrendous, let's say I do, weird edits on top of each other, move this one really loud. Let's do fade out on that. Let's do a crossfade. And now, like, even after saving the project, I wanted to go back to the original. I can now just come right over here and have my original as my... so I could just do from my snare. So I have my original track and I could have all of my edits right there. So that's a good method if you're doing lots of edits where you may want to just simply jump back and forth. So if you want to just call this, original, and then you could, kind of edit with disregard, and you don't have to worry about it being kind of, if you did, you know, 1 edit on this track, 6 edits on that track, 4 edits on this, 1 edit here. You wanted to just go right back, you could always just revert directly to your original track and work that way. Okay, so we have Alex, who asks, hey Greg, a long time Cubase user here, Cubase 5. Is there a way to set the MIDI keyboard to only permit notes of the chord track to be played? Sort of what NI's keyboards do. Okay, so you want to set the MIDI keyboard to permit so only the notes in the chord track. So let's say if I'll just jump back to a different project. Okay, so let's say I have like a Rhodes patch here, and I want to just come over to my chord pads. So I'm going to turn this on. So you see that these will be triggered from C0 on the particular chord pad. So if you what you wanted to do, if you wanted to limit the range of the chords to only be triggered, and let me adjust my keyboard controller here. Go down in our octave. Maybe. All right, I have my keyboard transposed here. Yeah. So if you wanted to just have the keyboards trigger only that specific range, all you have to do is you could just go into like the input transformer. So we'll just come over here and we'll say panel. So I only want notes from, let's say, C0 through so I want to filter out notes from, we'll say C0 through C1. I want those notes only. So at this point we could choose filter, and we want to say type is equal to notes, or we could just actually say value 1 is outside range of C0 C1. So now only so you could just come here and say, and actually just kind of learn the particular notes. So you could just choose to filter out the particular note range directly there, and then it'll only play back, it'll filter out all notes that aren't playing chords. So I'm not familiar, I don't have the NI controller, so I'm not familiar with the function, but if you wanted to just filter that out, all you'd have to do is just turn that on from the input transformer. Okay, so Michael Clement asks, hey, I got a MIDI controller sending info to CC number 88. I've worked the MIDI input transformer and set up a preset to fix it, but it has to be set up on each track. Do you know of a workaround? Okay, so we see, okay, so MIDI controller is sending info to CC88. I worked on a MIDI input transformer and set it up as a preset to fix it, but it has to be set for each track. Do you know workaround? So all you have to do is, once it's set up, you can obviously figure out why your keyboard is transmitting CC88. But if you go to the project level, at this point you could, just say we want to filter out, so you'd say, okay, we want to filter, we'll say type is equal to controller, and then you've probably done this already. And we'll say value 1 is equal to 88. So once this is done, we could just go to any of the tracks as you record. And, so let's say if I go to this track, we could just say, okay, let's go to the project. And this way, this particular preset will be automatically accessed. So when we come over here, we can see that, once we don't have to set it up every single time once it's saved as a project. And in previous versions, if you're in 11 or earlier, you could save it as a global or a track preset here. But just go to the input transformer and just choose project and have that activated, and then that will automatically filter out CC88. But, it's obviously, the real problem is, why is the controller transmitting MIDI CC88 unexpectedly if you don't want it? All right, wonderful to see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. I'm glad you can make it today, buddy. All right. All right, so we see Colin Tilton says, try to render a track with Melodyne as an extension, included all effects except Melodyne. I exported a track and mixed down. That worked. Is that the only way? So if you have a track with an ARA2 extension, so let's say if I come over to spectral layers here, one of the things that you could do, because realize that this is almost like running in real time, is just come over here, try going to your ARA2 extension and try to make the track extension permanent before rendering, and I think that will take care of it for you. So again, just right here from the ARA2 extension, this is in Cubase 12, you could just say make track extension permanent, or you could remove the extension. So try doing that before rendering, and I think it's kind of how ARA2 is implemented. You see Michael Teams is already distributing his virtual ice cream. It's a good way to start summer in the Northern Hemisphere. All right. Okay. So we see you got your, just says, anyone here got any inside info when a new Cubase is coming out? Feels long overdue, started to mess with other systems out of boredom. So, just, realize that we generally don't announce stuff before it's released. And as if people that are involved in testing, I would imagine that they're under a non-disclosure agreement, so there may not be much information, but, realize that there's a lot of new things with different operating systems and, getting everything working with Apple Silicon and getting plugins updated, but you rest assured that all the developers are working at a fever pace. But so we see, so I think if you're patient, that it wouldn't be worth, exploring other DAWs. So, and if you feel that you're kind of checking out other stuff out of boredom, learn a new feature in Cubase that maybe you haven't explored yet. As evidenced by the live streams, there's lots and lots of features that you could master, that I'm still mastering new features as well. All right, so we see just a question. From Couscous. Hello, is it possible to change the VST instrument on an instrument track without deleting its output tracks? Okay, so we'll do a new project just to make this nice and clean. Okay, so let's add an instrument track. Let's do retrolog. And we'll say a pad shop. And then we'll add a Hallian Sonic. Okay, so just to read the question here again. Possible to change the VST instrument track without deleting its output tracks. So if I'm here, I could just take this output and just say, okay, I want that going to, let's see, that was pad shop. Let's see if we could, so now we could just have that automatically go to Hallian Sonic. So once we see this here, I can say, okay, I want my Hallian Sonic track to switch to retrolog. So now we can see that the outputs have changed. So my pad shop is now Hallian Sonic. My Hallian Sonic is now retrolog. So let me know if that's what you want to do, but you could just change it in the MIDI output stage there. You see Sable enters just a comment to Michael Teams about NDAs. That, you know, to her, NDAs are golden. She uses them often. So, all right, we have Arnold checking in from Germany. Thanks for being on the live stream today. All right, my chat field just jumped. All right. All right, so we have Antaeus on. Thanks for joining and being a part of the live stream today. All right, so we have a question. Hey, Greg, can you tell me why mastering is recommended to use True Peak when every song that I analyze goes above 1 dB? So, you know, it could be, you know, depending on what you're actually doing analysis on. So if it is an analysis maybe of the original file, you may not notice that. Or if it is an analysis on, let's say, you know, the file that's been, you know, released on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon Music, you know, realize that, you know, those algorithms can have an impact on the gain staging. So generally, you know, people will use True Peak, but, you know, if you're doing analysis, make sure that, you know, if you're doing it like directly from a CD, or if you have the actual, you know, raw master files, I think that your analysis may show different gain stages. See, Michael Teams is asking that everybody have a great time at Ted Perlman on the Zoom meetup. So, all right. So we have a question from Lawrence Koch. It says, "Hello from Rhode Island. Is there a way to insert fades automatically when deleting a section in a track, like removing silence in a vocal?" All right. So let's take a look. Okay, let me just go to okay, so let's say if we remove a portion, so let's say if we just come here and delete, so generally it's not automatically going to write a fade in. What I see some people will do is, as we do this, could select directly after and then hit A, and that would just do like the fades to range. So you could, I think that there are macros to extend the range. So let's say if I use this and let's say Shift X, then I think we could, let me see if we could take a look at this real quick, because I think we could extend the range via key commands. So, let me just look for the function name. Thought there was like a okay, so one of the things you could do is if you have a range selected, so I'm not sure if you want it to, like, as we delete this, and then if you hold down Alt or Option and the left arrow, Alt or Option, and let me just see if I could. So we could extend the range with the Alt key to the left, and then Alt Shift to the right. Okay, so let's say if I come here and then hold down my Alt key and then Alt Shift to the right. Okay, so let me see if we can make a macro to do this. So I'm not sure if you have the time in the middle or not. So let's go to, let's say, key command. And let's create a new macro. All right, so I do so we'll split the range and we'll add that function, and now let's just choose delete. And now I want to come here, and so we'll nudge start left of the range. Select that and add it. And then we want to say Option Shift right, so we'll nudge end to the right, add, and then we will adjust fades to range. We'll see if this works. So we got the, so I could play with that a little bit over the weekend, but you know that showed us how to. So we got the first part. Let me just try it one more time here. So it looks like that part faded, but this part didn't. So let me know if you wanted to do it like that, Lawrence. I could play with the macro, and if you want to email me, I'd be happy to kind of play with that macro a little bit. But I think we could get it with a little more time, but I want to make sure we get to all the different questions as well. But let me know if you have a space there or if there's no space where you just kind of came and just did like a Shift X or Control Shift X, where we, sorry, just where that the event earlier just moved over. So let me know. But at this point, we could kind of nudge the playhead over and say, you know, fade out and come here and hit the letter A. You know, and do a fade in, fade out based on the cursor positions. So, but let me know. And also, if you just have those selected and just hit X, the two events that are kind of next to each other will just do a crossfade. So, but if you could give me a little more information, that'd be great. It's great to see you on the live stream. All right, Michael Teams wants people to smash the like button. All right, wonderful to see Nick on the live stream from England. All right, we see Nick has been granted about 2 gallons of lemon meringue pie ice cream. That sounds like good. And remember, we had to do the metric system. All right. All right, we have the Heartbreak Time Machine. Just wishing a happy Friday to everyone on Team Cubase. All right, so we see Influential Gaming asks, are Cubase and most DAWs designed to work fully with an open PC OS, or does it create issues? So I'm not exactly sure what you mean by an open PC OS. You know, obviously it's designed to work with Windows 10 and 11. But if you could maybe specify what you mean by open PC OS, if it's, you know, but I think the vast majority of people will be using kind of Windows 10 or 11, and people can tweak from there. You see just nice, great comment from Jazz Dude. Says a lot of the workflow problems we have in Cubase is the fact that we have to deal with Windows/Apple OS in the background, which adds weird new problems like window handling and high DPI scaling issues. Yeah. All right, great to see Michael Pierce on. Hoping that everyone is safe and well. He's just popping in before he does some more teaching, and he will be back in a bit, and he hit the like button. So That's good. So we didn't get a chance to catch up on the Zoom meetup, Michael Pierce. It was great to see you there. Looked like you were in a nice spot. So you see, John Barry just says, "Hi, Greg and all. Great Zoom meeting Tuesday. Did anyone clock the number of name drops? Ted knew everybody. So yeah, Ted does know a lot of people. So, and name dropping could help in certain industries. So, and Ted's had a lot of success in the industry." Okay, so we see clarification from Kuzkuz. He says, "I apologize. I was referring to a situation with drums where kick, snare, hi-hats, etc. have separate outputs, and I need to change the VST instrument to another one so that the outputs remain." I don't think that there's a way to do that. So if I come over and say, okay, I have an instance of Groove Agent SE here. And we have our kits, and thank you for the clarification on that. But let's say as we get to the mixer that we have our tracks going to different outputs here, like so. So as we would kind of play different components here, that these would go out of different outs. So I don't think that if I switch this Groove Agent with my multi-outs to another instrument with multi-outs, that there isn't a way for the two plugins to be kind of cognizant, because the outputs are tied to the particular instrument. So if we, take this to another instrument, those outputs aren't going to remain, because each, you could get into situations where you take it to an instrument that just has one stereo out, and then you don't hear anything. So I don't know of a way to automatically carry over like a multi-out drum VSTI and have that automatically carry over to a different multi-track drum VSTI. So some people may have groups set up for, kick and snare and hi-hats, and then be able to route to the group as opposed to, different physical outputs. But, every drum instrument could work differently. And there's no guarantee that when you do that it's going to immediately have all the same sounds in a different instrument that doesn't support multi-outputs. So there could be a lot of gotchas in there that could make it problematic for people. All right, so we have Bruce Bruton from Simi Valleys in the house, and he's already hit the like button. And we missed having you on the Zoom meeting, but glad you're here today. All right. All right, so we just see question, and then my chat field just jumped on me. Okay, so it says, Greg, do you use dithering on the master bus when doing mixdown? If yes, when? Are there any special cases where you don't use it? If yes, why? It may be a stupid question, but your opinion interests me. Thanks. I always kind of have a habit of having the dithering stage, like in my personal computer. I always have it on in my master channel in the template. So I just kind of, used the Lin1 dithering, which was, an updated version from the UV22 plugin that was in previous versions, I think 11 and earlier, going way back. And I just I haven't critically listened to it to see if it makes a huge difference. I know lots of people that don't do dithering and their mixes come out fine. I'm not sure if the engine is doing internal dithering when when it's needed. So if you're at a 24-bit 96K project and then you're exporting to 16-bit 44.1 or 24-bit 48K, I haven't critically A/B'd it, and usually what I would do is do it with and without and take it into Wavelab, take the same files, and Wavelab has an audio file comparator, which allows you to actually generate a delta file of the difference between the two files. So I haven't done that in a long time, but I just have my dithering turned on all times in the last stage of my master output for my personal computer. But I could be doing that out of old habit, so maybe other people could share their experience, but I could play around with it and maybe have a better answer on Tuesday and see what I find out. Okay. All right, so we see Soren says question and perhaps argument. Steinberg have made 32-bit interfaces because it matters, makes difference. We have heard 32-bit is better in 24 and 16. Groove Agent SE has 16-bit sounds and Groove Agent 24-bit. Do you know if Groove Agent will ever have 32-bit sounds and all loops and samples in Media Bay? So a lot of times, realize that the vast majority of audio interfaces, can't play 32-bit integer sounds. So I'm not sure if everything will, while it could do it with the Steinberg interfaces, there's many more audio interfaces that are on the market. So to make a file that could potentially not be able to be played back through audio hardware could be problematic. Maybe as things advance in the future and converters kind of evolve from, how they evolved from 16 to 20 and then 20 to 24. And now, a couple years ago, we've seen just a smattering of 32-bit integer interfaces. I think it could be problematic having audio files that can't be played back and loops that can't be played back on a lot of interfaces, and we still get a lot of this sonic quality of taking even like a 16-bit file and doing all the processing at 32-bit with, and doing the audio engine at 32-bit floating point or 64-bit floating point resolution. So I think that can be more critical than what the source file resolution is for loops and samples. All right, so we see Acme Brand asks, how well do Steinberg channel effects compare to large brand names counterparts, such as saturators, compressors, classic channel strip EQs? They must pay licensing fees to use the actual brand names. Yes, I think there's if you actually go through and use the, if you had to do everything using the included Steinberg plugins, I don't think that you would be lacking anything. And if your project didn't sound good, it wouldn't be the plugin's fault. So, we generally don't necessarily, go to other companies and license the image and, and license, the approval to use. We do it, Yamaha does it sometimes. So, we've done it with, the Rupert Neve designs, and that's because Rupert Neve and one of the Yamaha developers, Dr. K, who did the original, the VL synthesizers, and he's done the VCM plugins. He kind of came up with his own very clever modeling approach, and that was the only one that was actually authorized by Rupert Neve. So, that was kind of a partnership that we did with Rupert Neve Designs. So we see that on some of the Yamaha flagship consoles, and we sell the Portico plugins, so the 5033 and 5043, so an EQ and compressor. But generally, there are a lot of companies, and I remember having a personal conversation with Rupert Neve, and he was always a bit felt a bit slighted that companies would try to make a plugin that looked like his hardware that had no relation to the sound of it. So, and as a company, Yamaha specifically and Steinberg kind of philosophically, if we're going to partner with someone, that it's going to have their actual authorization, and it's not just a user interface that looks like hardware that doesn't actually sound like the original. So, there's kind of some deep philosophical, trends with that, how they want to work and do stuff. So, but I think you could get wonderful results using the built-in plugins. And try it on your next project. Like I used to use a lot of other tuning programs before Very Audio is around, and I really don't use those. So and as Cubase adds more plugins, I just use less and less third-party plugins personally, and I don't feel like I'm missing anything. It's always interesting. I see lots of people, it's like, this is the newest, greatest compressor, and then it goes out of flavor in 2 or 3 months, and people are always kind of chasing the sound. It's like, okay, just use this, and you can get that same sound, and it works every time, and it'll be updated with the program. All right. Okay, so Bruce Bruton is happy to get his ice cream from Michael Teams. So you got yours. Just says, I used to make great music on 16-bit ADATs in the 90s. After that jump in quality, I could easily care less about the bit wars. All right. And got yours saying is 24-bit. He's found to be a nice balance of quality and performance. All right, so we see Heartbreak Time Machine. How do I select a track plus all events at once? Okay, so let me just come over. So I think it's going to be a 2-step process. You could probably make a macro or just a keyboard shortcut. But let's say if we jump to this project here and we scroll down. So, it could be problematic for a lot of editing things to say, okay, now I select this and everything else is selected, so there could be a lot of ramifications, but you could hold down Shift and double click on the first event, or just go to Edit, and there's a select all on tracks, all on selected tracks. So there's, 2 different functions for doing that, but realize that when you're doing this, and like, let's say you select this track and then you're like, okay, I want to edit, I want to cut this one, that, sometimes you could have edits that can be carried over from, unintended edits because all the things are selected. So, but if you want to do that, check out either Shift, double click, or just do on the first event, or as you select, just come over and have a keyboard shortcut set up for all on selected tracks. So, but there could be a lot of nasty things that happen editing wise if things are unintentionally selected. Yeah, so it's not going to automatically do it, but if you wanted to see, is there a key command for that? So, but if you wanted to just come over here and just go to edit, let's say, and we'll just do all on selected tracks. I think it's just going to be. So select all on tracks, so you could just use that, and that will select all on the particular track that is currently selected. All right, so we see from influential, just asking about open code, alternative to Windows, in other words. So as long as it's kind of running Windows in the background, I don't think it's going to, if that's kind of the core of the OS, generally I don't think it's going to be tested and go through typical quality assurance testing on kind of alternate OSs. But some people will run kind of, alternate kind of, scaled down versions of Windows with fewer background processes. All right, so we see Steve Scarrow just saying hi from Pittsburgh. School's out, so you can actually join again. I hope you're enjoying your summer. My son has 2 more weeks of school, and he's kind of looking forward. It doesn't seem like they've done much for the last 2 weeks. All right, but we're glad that you could join us again, Steve. All right, so we have a question. What is the fast way to copy an entire session? Like if I want to duplicate the verse of a song without copying every single element of it. All right, so we'll show it in different project here. Okay, so I'm going to just use my range tool. So let's say, okay, and we'll activate this project. And I'm going to hold down, I think it's Control and Shift, Control or Command plus Shift while using the range tool. And that will globally select. And then I just hit Command D, and that could just duplicate. So, but with that range, we could also just come right over here and just, I think if we choose, so again, just kind of select this, and then if you want to hold down like Alt or Option, you could do that. You could also, once it's been split, so let's say I do Shift X, and then if we have all these events selected, so I realize you may not want to do that. So then once the events are selected, you could just, let's put this maybe into shuffle mode. I can hit Command or Control D, and that will just automatically kind of duplicate that particular event, like so. So let me know if that's kind of helpful, if that's what you want to do. So try with the range selection tool. See discussion of dynamic range of audio, and John Costigan says he believes the space shuttle liftoff came in at 155 dB. So. Okay, so we see question, could you make a video to make a new song with artificial intelligence inside of Cubase 12? So, it really could depend on what your definition of artificial intelligence is. So I think, you could do stuff in Groove Agent where it's going to automatically switch patterns within a few, within like every two measures, within like one or two levels of complexity using the beat agent, creating different harmonies from chord tracks, and the chord tracks are derived from an audio file, and, mapping to scale assistant. So I'm not sure if you consider that to be artificial intelligence or not, or if it's, I know it's kind of lots of discussion on, and I think sometimes people's expectations are that it's, someone will just say, oh, make me a hit R&B pop song in the key of D in the style of this artist, and have the program do that. So Cubase doesn't do that, and I think that if that becomes the norm, then everyone's going to have the same song, and no one will be able to copyright it, no one will be able to make money, and the AI algorithm may own the copyright. So there's lots of ramifications there. So you see Alexander Plasko just asking, what is the dB threshold for pain? I experienced that once and it hurts never again. I found that if you're near the drum area at the Yamaha booth, where they let the drums just free all day for people to come up and hit them, that gets you pretty close to the threshold of pain being. But I think it's an OSHA violation at like 108 dB or something like that. It's unsafe at that environment. All right, so we see a question from Quellen. Hey, Greg, how can I print some MIDI with Arpachi 5 and Arpachi SX to only one selected MIDI part of 4 bars and not to the whole composition of the track with the MIDI insert? All right, so let's give it a shot. Okay, so we'll come over here to, let's say, synth bass. All right, so we'll come over here. Let's get to MIDI inserts, and I want this to be move some octaves here. Okay, so I'm going to just chord this. I'll just take a quick chord progression here, and I'm going to drag this down to trigger the bass. So we come here. All right, so we have just kind of plain chords here. So we'll have just kind of, typical block chords. So let's say this, I'm going to select this event. Let's get a MIDI and go to freeze MIDI modifiers. Okay, it looks like it does it to all of them. Okay, I was seeing if we could do that just to Okay, so it looks like it does it, the freeze MIDI modifiers on a track basis. Okay, let's see if there's a clever way of doing. So we only want it on like this particular measure. So I'm gonna just select only the event, and let's see if we can do. So it looks like the freeze MIDI modifiers is going to be at the track level. Okay, so it's going to do all the events on track, but we only want to do this particular one. Okay, so let's duplicate the track version. I will, and I know this is a bad workaround, but let's go to freeze MIDI modifiers. All right, we'll make okay, so this is our copy. All right, so I'm going to come here. Let's just grab the range tool. And I'm just going to have this snap to the bar. So as I go to my range selection, I'll just turn on J. Okay, and then I'm going to copy. Let's come back here. And on this, I'm going to hold down Alt-V, Alt or Option-V, and kind of just paste that over top. So, but you could always do it on two separate tracks as well. So let's say if I come here and, another method. So let's say we start here. I want to duplicate this track. And on this track, let's do our freeze MIDI modifiers. All right, and I'll turn on I'll turn this on again. So come, select track, go to freeze MIDI modifiers. And then I could, at this point, erase that and move this up and mute that. So, but it looks like the freeze MIDI modifiers is going to be only for the one particular track. And I don't think that there is a way. Let me just see if I automate the track here. And then I turn the plug-in on and off if that's automatable or not. I don't think it is. Yeah, so you might have to split it to two different tracks. So I wish there was a better way of doing it, but I'll play around with that. I'll play around with that over the weekend, see if I come up with a better workflow. Sorry about that, Quellen. Right. Sorry, just reading through comments. Okay, so we see, hi Greg, let's say you've created a sampler instrument that you'd like to use in future projects, while the current project and its audio is to be archived elsewhere. How would you do that? Thanks. Okay. So we'll just open up a different project here. I think I may have a sampler track in recents. Guess not. All right. Okay, so or I'll just do a new file here. I'll do a brand new project. All right, so let's say I want to. So we'll come over here. We'll create empty. All right, I'm going to drag a audio file over, and then we'll. Okay, so let's come over here, and I'm going to render this file, and we'll give it a specific name. All right, let me just do the rendering correctly this time. Sorry. Okay, so we'll call it sampler track test. All right, so it's rendered. I want to, we'll erase this file. I'll go to my media and let's remove unused media. So we go to our pool window and we should see probably just a sampler track. All right, so now I'm going to drag that into the sampler control. All right, and we're going to save track preset. So we'll call this June 2nd, 2023. Okay, so let's say I go to new project. I think the track preset's just going to reference. So let's go to user presets to okay, so we go to track preset sampler. All right, and then we'll see our June 2nd, 2022. So we drag that over, the file is there. So let's go and erase it in Finder. I'll move that audio file to a different location. All right, so let me look for. Okay, so now we see our sampler track test file. So I'll move this to the desktop. And let's see what happens when we drag this over. So yeah, didn't find the file, but often, what. So if you're going to be kind of archiving it, separately, you may want to just create, when you come over to the sampler tracks. So let's say if we go directly back here where we have our file, and we go to, let's say, the pool window, we'll notice that we'll have the sampler track. And that's going to be kind of the audio file that's going to be, so we can see that it's going to be placed directly into the sampler track folder. So, try to make sure that you keep that sampler track folder. I'll play around with it more, see if there's a way to automatically kind of follow that. If you took it into something like a Groove Agent SE or Hallian, you could say, okay, I want to come to my Groove Agent SE, transfer the sample over, and then at that point you could export the kit with the samples. But I don't think that there's a way to do that within the sampler track itself. But I'll do some more work on that and see if we could show it on Tuesday. Sorry about that. All right, just reading through different comments. All right, so we see how do I unload / reset from a track preset if there's a full reset in the preset list. So a lot of times if we have a track preset on a particular channel here, I'll drag over a quick track preset. And if you've modified it and want to reload the track preset easily, so we'll come over here, we'll go to presets, to track presets, audio, and I'm just going to drag this over, and we see now we have inserts. We just dragging our one over so we have more inserts. So we open up this particular channel, and as we work with this, so I have my EQ set up, and we can see that the track preset is here in the edit channel settings. So at this point, if I've done all sorts of horrible edits and move stuff around, I change my delay. At this point, you could just click on the reload to track preset directly from there. And let's see if there's kind of a track preset, the same kind of functionality there that could be accessed elsewhere. But if you just come right here into the edit channel settings, there's the reload track preset, and that will take you and directly back to the track preset. I guess you could load a track preset. Let's see if I go to my control settings, if we see anything on the audio to have that same functionality. Yeah, I don't see anything. Let's just make sure. So, but try from the edit channel settings, and then you could restore your track preset like that. So let me know if that's helpful. All right, great to see Randy Lee on. All right, so Heartbreak Time Machine wants people to smash the like button. All right, so I just see, why my Halion don't work anymore. There's no license for it. So I'm not sure which version of Halion that you're using. So there's Halion 7 migrated from, the USB-E licenser from Halion 6, and Halion 7 is on the Steinberg Activation Manager. Or if it's Halion Sonic SE, which has kind of been upgraded to Halion Sonic. But if as we went from 11 to 12, the license had migrated for Halion Sonic SE that comes with Cubase. The license had migrated from Halion Sonic SE to Halion Sonic SE on both versions. And under 12, if you installed the latest Halion Sonic SE, that license works under your Cubase 12 license, as does Halion Sonic. So if you could let us know exactly which Halion version, and if it's Halion Sonic, or Halion Sonic SE, that would be helpful. See, the Heartbreak Time Machine says he's never used Arpachi. I thought it was a misspelled. Yeah, so it's a cool little arpeggiator plugin. You can do lots of cool, interesting things with it. Michael Teams is hanging with the group, absorbing what doesn't bounce off. All right. So we have Noah Byrne, just saying hello to everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Or Noah, yeah, I'm not sure if it's Noel Byrne or Noel Bem. So, thanks for being on. All right, so we see just a question. In Transformer, there are only 4 modules to change. Is it possible to create more than 4 modules? I would like to transform 8 faders that are sending MIDI CC and like to change them. So you could use the input transformer directly from, so we see our input transformer here. We could also go to a MIDI insert plugin, and then you have the transformer that you could set up there. So you could do also kind of the transformer as a particular MIDI plugin, but if you wanted to remap, so let's see if I wanted to do this with 4 modules. I think we may be able to remap, and let me just check one other thing here. Okay, so let's see if we could do more. So we'll just again, come to our input transformer. So let's say we'll go to our project and we'll open a panel. All right, so let's say we want to transform. All right, so I know in the logical editor we could do kind of a bracket parenthesis, but I don't see it there. So let's say, okay, we want to transform MIDI CC1, and we'll say value 1, we're going to add all right, I'll just start this over. Okay, so we want to transform, let's say type is equal to controller, value 1, we want to say modulation, and let's turn that into okay, and then we'll say we're going to go to value 1, and let's add 10. All right, and let me just, yeah, because I know on the logical editor we have functions where we could kind of bracket and kind of couple multiple stages together. So, but you could, have, so try experimenting with the, so you could have 4 here, and then also, go to your MIDI inserts, and then you could have another transformer. I know it doesn't give you 8, but you could have 4 transformers as different MIDI inserts. So you could remap all of those, but if you have to remap 8 controllers, see if also you need to, it might be faster to actually just have the controller spit out the correct MIDI CCs that you want. But you could try just to do 4 in the input transformer and then 4 as transformer as MIDI plugins. All right, we see the Heartbreak Time Machine has to go do some paid work. Thanks for joining us. Michael Teams wants people to whack the like button, so that allows us to continue to do these live streams. Thanks for that, Michael. All right, so we see for Michael Teams says he has a question, but it might be easier as an email. So I think you could, I think you have my email address, Michael. I know that we're having issues getting the email from the club Cubase at steinberg.de forwarded still. I think I tested it before the live stream, but you just reach out and be happy to help you. Or if you wanted to try to ask in the questions, we can see if we can get to it. All right. All right, so we have Martin Downey checking in from New Zealand. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we have a question from Noah who asks, is there a way to copy only the articulation expression map that I have created and inserted to notes, attribute my case, not direction, to a new different track with different notes? Okay, so let's give it a shot. Okay, so let's say we have, I'll just duplicate this part and I will erase all of my MIDI notes here. Okay, and I'll just enter in some articulations. All right, so I'm going to import the key switches there for that instrument, and I'll just import the key switches for this. Okay, so we'll all right, so now we'll select our articulations and okay, so I'm just going to alternate here between these two. Okay, so let's see if we can do it in logical editor. So we'll come over here. Okay, so it doesn't look like the logical editor, but let's see if we go into maybe the list editor. Okay, so let's say if we look at this in the list editor, right, we can see the text. Add it. Hang on just one second. I have my son's knocking at the door. Hang on. All right, sorry about that. All right, so we see these entered as text events that will show up in, I think will just show up in the event. Let's say if I wanted to, maybe we could create a macro. So I'm going to make a logical editor preset. I'll test something here. All right, so I want to delete notes, and we'll say MIDI CC. Okay, so let's see if I run this on our existing track, if the articulations stay. Okay, so let's see if we could run that logical editor preset here. Okay, so we'll just say delete. Sorry about that. All right, so I'm going to try to delete the notes and then copy the event over, and then I think that will make a macro that should allow us to see the to retain the articulations. Sorry about that. Let me just. Okay, so let me just build that logical editor. So we'll delete notes. All right, so let's add some of the articulations. Okay, so I want to, let's see what happens when we duplicate this track here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to create a macro. So we'll get our key commands. We'll make a new macro. Okay, so I want to duplicate the track. We'll select all on tracks. So we'll select all on tracks. Add, and let's get to our logical editor preset. This will be found under, so I just saved that as delete notes, so we'll process logical editor preset. Okay, so now we see our expressions with notes in this particular part. Let's run the macro. Okay, so copy only articulations. Okay, let me just, so we duplicate track and just get the order of this right. All right, and then we will select all on the tracks. And then let's process the logical editor. All right, so let's see if we get that going in the macro. So it looks like those 3 steps will work. I'm going to check the macro one more time, make sure I didn't make some boneheaded mistake. I'll just repeat this. Try it one more time. It looks like those 3 steps will do what you want. Yep. So that way we could have no notes but the same articulation. So again, the macro, and sometimes if stuff is going too fast, you may have to kind of give the macro a little more time. But try just coming in here to so project, you want to duplicate that particular track. First, make the process logical, like delete notes in the logical editor, save it as a preset. Duplicate the tracks, select all in tracks, and I just did that twice. And now we could just come over here and then execute the delete notes, and then your articulations will automatically be preserved for you. So let me know if that will work. Sorry, it took me a while to get there. Okay, so we have a question from Jose. It says, hi Greg, a project has sections with tracks, example, drums, bass, piano, etc., recorded at different tempos. Is it possible to modify the tempo of a specific section without affecting the other sections? Okay, so let's just find a thing of a project. We'll just do the Amos Moses here. Okay, so let's say if we have our tracks in musical mode, so if we select all of the events, we could put them into musical mode, and that will allow them to follow different tempos. So say, okay, it has, so the question is again from Jose, project was tracks, drums, bass, piano, etc. recorded at different tempos. Is it possible to modify the tempo of a specific section without affecting the other sections? So if I come here and just add a tempo track, so let's see if we have one. So I'll come here, let's add a tempo track. All right, so say my kind of default tempo, I think in this project is 100 beats per minute. So I'm going to add tempo track. All right, and we're going to activate it at 100 beats a minute. And let's say at this specific time in the song, I just want to adjust the tempo up here, and we'll do it as a step and say, okay, at this point I want the song to speed up and slow down. So as we listen to it, let me just check my audio connections here quickly. So now as we come here, I could just take this one section of the song and speed it up and slow it down. So I'm not sure if your elements are in musical mode already. So let's say, okay, we'll start our tempo at 100 here, and we just want one particular section to speed up. At this point, we'll just say, I'll make this larger. So as we place now, we're at our tempo. So everything will be kind of following the tempo. So if the tempo kind of goes back to the same value it was previously, it's going to speed up now. And let me put my bass into musical mode here, sorry. So as soon as it gets to this point, all the tracks will speed up and slow. So we'll start to speed up. So let me know if that's helpful for what you want to do. So I'm not sure. So if you have different tracks, they could all, as long as you kind of have a tempo value for what the initial recording was at, it could be placed into musical mode, and then you could just kind of speed up and slow down different sections of your song. All right, so I think I saw an email come in from Michael Teams. Let's see if we could read through that really quickly. Thanks for saying that, Michael. Okay, so Michael's question is, I have 8 analog outs on the Focusrite 18i20. They are going to the Aviom input module. The setup leaves no outs for external effects. Can I use a patch bay to route to the Aviom and then to mix and repatch to external effects? You know, one of the things you might be able to do, and I'll just check to see. I'll just look at the Focusrite interface here quickly. If there is an ADAT output on the interface, you know, you could probably expand I'm just looking at a picture of it just to see if there's an output connection, but if you have another audio interface that has ADAT in and out, so you could probably set it up as a just yeah. So there is ADAT in and out on that interface, so you could expand it that way if you wanted to, and it says you have 8 analog outs. They're going to the Aviom input module to set up. Leaves no outs for external effects. Can I use the patch bay to route to the Aviom? Then to mix, repatch to external effects. I think if you wanted to have a patch set up for your Aviom, and when you're not using that, like let's say you're done tracking and then you send it to an alternate destination with your patch bay to integrate external effects, you should be able to do that without any problems. But if you needed to do it at the same time and kind of couple those together, that could be problematic. But if they're going to be kind of done at different times, you should be able to change the outputs with the destination. And at that point, that's when it's helpful to just have your outputs store a preset and have your external effects. Once you have that patched in, you just simply add to favorites, and then you could recall your favorite right there for your external instrument or external processing. So thanks for sending the email, Michael. See, Michael Teams does his best work with his eyes closed. All right, so we see Noah just says, hi Greg, sorry, as I can see it, you're using the expression map in direction mode, which will copy but an attribute the way I work. Okay, so let's go back to that example, see if I saw the project open. Okay. So I guess if it's going to be an attribute that may be tied to the particular note, okay, so let me go to my expression map. Okay, make sure I have this right. Okay, so we'll now give this a try. Okay, so now let's say if I'm in the expression map here. Okay, so now let's see if we delete the notes, if the articulations are going to go along with it. Yeah, so I think if it's set to attribute, that's going to be tied to the note and will be erased as soon as the note is set up. Let me just see if we do this as duplicate track version. Yeah, so if it's going to be an attribute where it's, tied to the note once the note is erased, then at that point it's going to erase the articulation because that articulation is tied to the particular note. I'll continue to play with it over the weekend, see if I come up with any other solutions. So sorry for the misunderstanding, Noah. All right, so you see Michael Team says he has a song ready for me to play bass. So yeah, please send it over. Should have some time over the weekend to get some bass parts done. All right, reading through comments. All right. So we see value question is Steinberg celebrating Pride Month? I haven't seen any indication of it, but they may be doing something internally, and technically I don't work for Steinberg, so I don't get like the internal memos and activities that they're doing. But I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything, but they may be doing something kind of, more at the company level. So I don't know for sure. So we see Noah says, great macro for direction. Thank you. So I'm sorry it didn't work out. I'll see if there's, I'll keep working on it and see if I come up with some other workaround. Sorry about that. All right, so we have a question from Julian S. Says, hi Greg, question. When we have MIDI notes with different velocities, how to set a particular value to all of them, not the relative difference as it does by default? Okay, so I'll switch this over to velocity. And let's say as we look here, and I want to set all these to the same velocity, so I could just, I'll select all of my notes here. And I think if we go to the velocity value here, and it's one of the modifier keys, so let's say 100, and hit 100, and then maybe control. Yeah, so if you hold control or command with all the selected notes, all right, so now that all these notes are selected, and again, go to the velocity field, so I'll say 90, and then hold down control or command, and then as you hit enter, then all the selected notes, let me just select all the notes like that, so I'll say 90, control or command, and then they'll all be set to the fixed value that you type in. So hold down control or command when entering into value here. You could also do it in a logical editor, but this is probably faster. All right, so we have Steve Lead saying hi from San Francisco. So we see Michael Teams says, like with his his interface that the other effects does not. So one of the things you can always do if you have like even like a Behringer 88, like there, if you have other audio interfaces that may also work. I think you had a Fireface, so you might be able to get the Fireface to work as or a FirePod. I think you had the PreSonus one previously. If that works as if you get that to work as an I/O options, but there's a number of inexpensive I/O options as well. Okay, we have Uno Memento from Finland, who's on the road but came here to whack the like button, so thanks for doing that. All right, so we have Kelvin Jackson, who's just joined. How's it going? So we're just answering Cubase questions. So any questions you have, please feel free to ask away, and glad you can make it today. And we see also that Gareth is on. It's always wonderful to have Gareth on the live stream. We see that apparently Pablo has a gig tonight, so we have 3/4 of Hot Mess here. All right, so we see Gerald Ely just saying the velocity tip with the command key is new to me. So yeah, that comes in handy for a lot of different things. So if you wanted to change all of these, I'll just mute this track here. But if you wanted these all to be proportional with the velocity, we could adjust accordingly like that. Or if we wanted to be the same, Control or Command, and right before typing in the value. And then you could also do some cool stuff within the velocity editing. So if you wanted to grab the edge, you could just come over here and do almost like a fade out of velocity, or if you want to do a fade in of a particular section, or you say, okay, I just want to take like all the notes within this particular range. You could just say, I'll just go full screen here. But if you say, okay, I want to take all of those notes, we could bring them up or bring them down. And if these notes have a lot of variation in them, we could go to the right edge and kind of compress or expand the velocity differences right there. So really helpful if you want like more dynamic drum parts. So okay, so we see Kelvin Jackson says, it feels like I'm trying to learn a whole college subject in the span of a week. I bet so many people are schooled in this production program, just makes me feel like I know nothing. So as long as you get some work done, don't worry about like not, what you don't know about. There's plenty of people that make incredible livings in Cubase that, are on these live streams. We have people from some of the biggest bands in the world, some of the biggest audio engineers in the world that are routinely on the live stream kind of watching. But, as long as you know how to get what you want done, it doesn't matter if there's like a zillion features you don't know about, but have the confidence of knowing that when you do need those features that they are available, but you don't have to know every single thing in a program. Just learn one particular aspect of what you need to do to get your task accomplished, and then after a while you'll expand your number of tasks that you know how to do. But just have the confidence. Don't be discouraged because Cubase does so much. You don't have to use all its features, but when you kind of go down this maze of, I did 13 steps, you realize that someone has thought of steps 15, 16, and 17 for you so that you don't have to kind of follow your breadcrumbs home. So, so don't be discouraged. Just, you could treat things very simply like, okay, I need this part here. I need to cut that part and move it here. I need this part here. I need to move this there. I need to undo what I just did. Those basic tenets of being able to get your project done are very simple on the macro level. And, just being on the live streams, you'll learn a lot of great tips and tricks. You see, Michael Teams just says, yeah, he's been using Cubase for years and he's always learning something new. I'm usually learning something new as well on live streams. All right. So we have a name in Cyrillic, which I can't pronounce. Just saying hello to everyone. Sorry for my ignorance. All right. So we have a question. Is it possible to automate MIDI modifiers parameters? Thanks. Okay, so let's say I have a MIDI part here, and I want to go to my MIDI modifiers. So I think that we could do some of this with maybe the MIDI Insert plugin. So let's say if we want to go to our MIDI inserts, we'll see our MIDI modifiers here. So I'm going to set up my MIDI remote, and let's say I want my focus quick controls directly here on my nano control. So I have my encoders I'm using for my quick controls here. So let's see if we could get these assigned. So let's say I want to all right, so we'll select this track here. Don't want that. All right, so let me just go to, so we have our, I'll close this tab. So let's go to our quick controls. I'm going to go to my MIDI inserts here. So let's say I have my quick controls, and I'll just hold down Control or Command to have both of these open at the same time. Okay, so I'm going to click on the Learn button here. We'll give this a try. So I will now come over here and move this parameter of the quick controls while Learn is enabled. And now when I move this quick control, it's adjusting that particular parameter. So, and if I wanted my percentage to be quick control 2, I would click on Learn, move the parameter that I want. I'm going to first come over, I'll adjust this here for Learn. I'm going to select quick control slot 2. And then let's see if we could, while Learn is turned on, if we adjust this parameter. Okay, so now, so it looks like some of the parameters are adjustable, so I could adjust that. Let's take this parameter and put it on Learn for 2. Okay. So now I could have, quick control 1, adjust this parameter, and quick control 2. So a number of the different parameters can be controlled directly from here, but you might have to open up the quick controls and move the parameter and click on the L button, and make sure you select the slot. So you'll see like a little outline here. So if I say, okay, let's go to position, and let's see. So, some of the parameters you could control directly here to automate. So you give that a shot and see. So yeah, so I could just change like the position, pitch, velocity, length using my quick controls. So play around with that. So, open up the MIDI modifiers as a MIDI insert plugin. Open up the quick controls, click L, select the slot, move the parameter, and then there's a good chance that a lot of them will be able to be captured so you could automate it. See, Randy Lee has a great point. It says, put into practice what you do know and add new info to it and techniques as you learn. I often make the analogy, I remember like this wonderful kind of YouTube personality, musical YouTube personality who's incredibly successful, Nari Soul. And she does these wonderful piano and music theory YouTube videos, really wonderful, top notch. And Hans Zimmer had reached out to me to teach her Cubase, and she really just approached Cubase like learning an instrument, and that's kind of the analogy I made to her. It's like, okay, if you picked up a piano or a guitar, if you sat down at a piano, you're not going to play Chopin on day one. You do fundamentals and build. You play an E chord, an A chord, a G chord, C chord on guitar, and you learn how to get back and forth between those. So think of learning Cubase as, like learning a musical instrument. We see that Kelvin Jackson's going to tune in regularly for sure, so that's great. We hope to see you on future live streams. And feel free to ask any question. The only bad question is having one and being afraid to ask. All right. Okay, so we see Albanian Magic Station Records is full support for us, so thank you, and we're glad that you can make it. One of my college roommates, his wife was in the State Department, and they were living in Albania for a couple years. They enjoyed it a lot. All right, so a question, anything new about the live stream commercial? So yeah, it is being kind of worked on, so they have some different video stuff, and they're working on other projects as well. So we've had some continued meetings, but hopefully we'll be able to have kind of a quick video for promoting the live streams. So we got a nice little video from Hans Zimmer, gave us permission to use some parts of an interview we did with him as well. And if you still want to, send a little, if you're interested in expressing, just do a quick video of how the Club Cubase has been helpful for you. Be more than happy to, take any of the user testimonials that people want to share. So we'd appreciate that. See a lot of people wishing that their life had an undo history. So it could be like direct offline processing. You could do it non-linearly. That would be even better. So. Okay, just reading through comments. All right, so we see Gerald Ely has been granted 1 gallon of Kahula Cola ice cream. That sounds great. All right, so we see Uno Memento just says, I cannot join the Zoom meeting. Last time I was asked email and password. I knew password, but why email? So I'm not sure, it could depend if you're joining it online or joining it versus maybe within a Zoom program. So sorry that you couldn't make it. We see Jazz Dude's kind enough to post Nari Soul videos, and she's been on the live streams here before. Very sharp girl. Impressive. Okay, so we have Kevin Mehmed on. He asks, why do I have such a hard time sending my WAV files to people, Greg? Will there ever be a rush to have Cubase WAV files work to use in iTunes? So, make sure that when you're exporting a WAV file, it could be that iTunes doesn't, it could be that the resolution that you're exporting to, so if you go to your export audio mix down and you're choosing 32-bit, or 32-bit float, that iTunes may not support playing back 32-bit files. So, but try, sending it as 24-bit, but iTunes can play WAV files, it can play MP3 files, it can play AAC files. So, but it may not be able to do 32-bit float, or 64-bit float audio files. I haven't used iTunes in a number of years. But it could be that, maybe the resolution that iTunes is using, if you're doing like a 32-bit 96K, that's not supported to playback, or someone's audio hardware to play it back doesn't support that. So there could be some stuff like that, Kevin. But I hope you're doing well. Glad to see you on the live stream. All right, so Kevin asks, can you show me again, Greg, how to put the wrong picture in WaveLab on your own song I made? So I can show you how to put maybe the right picture on, but we'll show you how to put a picture on your file in WaveLab. So we'll come over here. Okay, so if we go to, you'll see metadata, and then you click on edit. Let's go to picture. So if you go to and select the ID3/iTunes and go to picture, and then all you have to do is just click on the plus sign to load the picture, and that will be as metadata for your file. So again, once you have a particular audio file, you can select a file up at the upper left-hand corner, select metadata. You want to edit the metadata. And you may kind of start off here, just get to ID3/iTunes, select the picture tab, and then the plus sign, and you could have the picture automatically inserted on a particular file. See, Kara says his brain is guilty of a lot of off-kilter processing, and he's changing guitar strings while listening to the Hangout, multitasking. All right, so I know we had one question that was emailed in, so let me get to that real quick. And this had to do with like how to link the send panner with the channel panner for an instrument. So let's say I have guitar parts here, and I'm going to add an effects channel to the guitar parts. So I'm going to revert this before I do that, because I've probably changed all sorts of tempo information. Okay, so what we want to do is to, when we look at our panning for the track, we want maybe the, let me just add this reverb and we want the sends to actually follow along with that. So we'll say, okay, let's get to make it stereo configuration. All right, so now both guitars will be routed to, so we listen to this guitar, and this guitar will be panned to the left. So when we go to our channel settings, if we wanted to have like different panning, I could say, okay, one of the things you could do is just take the particular, you see this little drop down menu, you could link the panners. So at this point, if I move my channel panner, it will automatically move the effect send panner. So we have this going to my revelation. So if I move to the left, the reverb as well as the channel will be panned that way. Now, sometimes what people do for an interesting effect, especially in guitars, this classic 80s thing, is if the guitar was panned all the way to the left, you may pan the reverb all the way to the right. And when you go to the secondary guitar, and if we didn't want to link the panners, but to say, okay, this is panned all the way to the right, I could pan the reverb in the opposite channel. So when you play both guitar parts, the reverb will be panned on the opposite side. But if you wanted to link the channels, again, go to this little drop down menu here, and you'll see link panners. And then as you move the channel panner, the send will automatically follow just like that. Okay. All right, let's go back to our chat field. Sorry, I don't have my email forward working, so I apologize for, we'll see if I can get all the emails that are sitting in there resent. All right, we see that popular Dave guy, the Songle, is making his appearance again. All right. And Nick saw him last week on VST2s on a street corner. Yeah. All right, well, sorry, I see Uno Memento tried to get into the Zoom and wasn't able to. Apologize for that. All right, so we see just hi, I have an idea, just a question. You can make the different tools of equalizer with new brushes. So I'm not sure what you want to do with the equalizer with a brush. One of the things that you can do that a lot of people don't necessarily know with, a couple of quick EQ tips, like if you wanted to set the pitch based on like the MIDI, based on a note. So a lot of times, you may go, okay, this song is in the key of E. You could say, let's go to E6, and then we could move the frequency of the particular EQ directly to that note, so we don't have to memorize that, okay, if A is 440, then 880 and 1760 and 3520 and 70, and 7040, that, and kind of figure out the math. You could just enter that in. And if you wanted to right click, you could also choose to, invert the EQ band just by right clicking on it. So if you're looking to get rid of like an annoying frequency, so it's not a paintbrush, but you can say, okay, this is the annoying frequency. Now I want to cut instead of boost. So we could do stuff like that to find some other tools that people aren't necessarily aware of with the EQ also is if you hold down the control or command key, I'm kind of restricted to only move for my gain and cut, and if I hold down my Alt or Option key, I can only change the frequency, and my Shift key, I can only change the Q. And even when I'm here, if I wanted to just hover over the dot, you could use the mouse scroll wheel to adjust the Q to have a narrower or wider Q factor right there. So, but let me know like what you mean by different tools, the equalizer with new brushes. But there's a lot of great stuff in the built-in channel EQ. See, Nick has a comment to Uno Momento about the getting into the Zoom meeting. Says he just logs into his Gmail and it seems to work. So make sure, like, you know, sometimes I know on my computer I could switch between different profiles, or if you're signed in with like a Google account, and if you have that kind of tied to your Zoom, that you should that may be contingent on if you're signed in for like Google functionality as well. So, but we missed having you there. You see Michael Teams just says he just downloaded Zoom program and has a join meeting button. So see Gerald Ely says he likes those EQ control tips. Yeah, so some good stuff. Okay, Randy Lee has his granddaughter calling. All right, so I think I'm at the end of questions. We'll see if there's more questions that come in, or if you want to learn anything about different functions, feel free to ask. See, John Koskinen says that he knew none of those EQ tips as well, so that's good. Now you could be EQ masters. I'll show you a couple other things that you could do on the EQ that may not be as obvious. So let's say we have 4 bands of EQ here. We could choose for these to be, parametric 1 or parametric 2 as we work with this. And the outer bands, we could have these set up for being low shelves or high shelves. So let's turn this off, and I'll just, let's say I want to do like a high shelf. Now, so we could have this be fully parametrics as we adjust, or we could have this be like high shelf 1. So there's different shelf shapes. Hard not to mess that up. All right. So we can say, okay, I want to do a high shelf 2. So this will actually have like a little bit of a dip. So even though it's one band of EQ, we can see that having this shelf will not only just like increase the shelf, but will kind of drop down before increasing. So we could just come right over here and switch between those different shelf shapes. So if you wanted more of a cut. Also, something that people often miss, if you go to the EQ settings here, you could say, let's show those controls as knobs or as sliders. Or if you don't want to see the controls, so you could have more, a bigger space to work with, you could have that set up. So some other really handy things that you could do. And I think we showed the... in the past, we've shown a comparison EQ. So all sorts of great little EQ tips that you could do. Okay, so we have Gareth asking... Greg, could you show demo of the Project Logical editor for people like me who never use it? All right, so you should definitely use the Project Logical editor. It's really good. All right, so let's say, you know, I wanted to take, so let's say we have automation here. Okay. Okay, so we have different automation. And I wanted to take the automation on this track and maybe like bump it up by a dB or down by a dB. So, and I just wanted to kind of hit one button that when I do this will just increase or decrease the automation on that particular track. So let's come over to the project. So we can think of this as being kind of a Boolean or like a conditional based editor. We could run, you know, you could choose to delete functions, transform, select, or deselect particular like functions. And then we could have pre-commands, so we could set up conditions, you know, to do particular functions. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these functions, and we'll say, okay, I want to take we'll say our container type. So we can say media type, we'll say audio, and we want to say our container type. All right, so let's say we'll do automation. So let's say our property is going to be set to parent object is selected. And now we'll say trim an increment volume of 1 dB. So as we take this, so I have this track selected, and if I did this right, may have to insert and say media type is, we'll say container type is equal to track. Okay, and we'll say property is set to parent object is selected. So let me just and let's say I'd want to do it on the selected track. So say property is set to track is selected. And now we can, if I remember how to do this, we'll insert and say property is object is set to parent object is selected, and we'll trim the automation. I think, let me just come over here. I think I made this as a factory preset. Okay, I'll just remove this. All right. So now, so we say container type is equal to event property is set to the parent object is selected. So that means that this, and then we'll say name contains volume. I'll just remove that. And then we could say, okay, now I want to increment by 1 dB. But let's say I want to, you know, take tracks that are, you know, there's a lot of different presets to work with. Let's say I want to take this particular track, and this track is disabled, and I want to hide disabled tracks. So we could also come over here and we'll just choose to, okay, we want to select tracks. So we'll say, okay, media type, we'll say container type is equal to track. And let's say the property is that the track is disabled. Okay, so now when we come here, we can just select the particular track that is disabled. If I did this right. All right, let me just try set this to. Okay, I'm sorry, this property is set to is disabled. All right, so now it's going to select all the disabled tracks. Let's say I have 2 tracks that are disabled. Okay, so now I'm going to select all the tracks that are disabled, and let's hide them. So I'm going to just come over here, and we'll say hide under channel invisibility. So we could actually just come over here and so I'm going to hide the selected channels and tracks, and we could also have macros within here. So let's say my bass and this guitar part are disabled, and I wanted to hide them from view, and I could click on apply, and all my disabled tracks are now hidden just that easily. So anytime that you want to set up a condition of, okay, you know, anything that has the word, you know, drum in it, or has different functions for, you know, I could say, you know, anything that has the word VO for like vocal or vox, what we want to do is color it as a particular color. So let's come over here, and I'll enable these tracks. So let's say I want to take any track that has a name, contains, and let's say like BAS, and we're going to choose to transform, and then I want to set a particular color. So we'll say, okay, I want to set it to, so all my bass tracks will be this yellow. So any track that is named bass will immediately kind of change to a particular color. So as we come here, we'll set this to our yellow, close. So you could do different kind of naming schemes just like that. So if you want to change colors, okay, I want to make it color 1. So we could just come over and again just apply different colors. So every vocal will be yellow, every bass could be red, every kick could be this color. And you could have all those set up and run it as a macro and colorize all of your tracks or change names. Like I want to take all these drums, and I'm going to take the selected tracks, and I want to put Pablo in the name of all these tracks because we know that they're Pablos. So I want to take our media type that is selected. So let's say we're going to take container type is track. We'll say the property that they are selected, and we want to rename, and we're going to say we're going to prepend, and we're going to add the word. So we could just come over here, and we'll say Pablo. So now all the selected tracks, let me just so we can say generate name, and we could just say Pablo. And let me just so now if we wanted to add the time to all of the files, I'm sorry, let me just set this to place. So we could change all the names like that. So let's come over. So we just changed it to Pablo. Let's try it and prepend again. So then we could just come over here, add that particular name, and let's say I want to do Pablo in 2 spaces. So now all of the selected tracks will be Pablo with 2 spaces. So stuff like that is some of the things that you could do, Gareth, to kind of start diving into the project logical editor. Okay. See, Bruce Bruton just says he thinks that everyone has learned something. All right, so we see Gareth just says, he says he should learn the project logical editor. Says it would be great to see ways of selecting and editing particular MIDI notes using the project logical editor. So usually MIDI notes would be using the logical editor. So let's come over to project here. So if I wanted to take notes between, let's say, A1 and E1, and let's do some processing on that. So we could now go to the MIDI logical editor, and hopefully I'll be better at this. So let's say we want to take, we want to transform, and we're going to say type is equal to notes. And then we can say our value 1 of a MIDI note message, and we'll say it's going to be inside range, and we'll say, A1 through E1. And so now I could select all of those notes between A1 and E1. All right. So we come over here, hit apply. Okay, so say should be inside our cycle range. start it again. Sorry, I'm brain cramped today. Okay, so we're going to say type is equal to note, so we can select all the notes. And now we want to say value 1. We're going to say inside range. So let's say A1. Oh, I'm sorry, A1 to E2. That's probably it. So I can now select all those notes in that middle part of the range, and let's say, what do I want to do with those now? So we're going to select this to be transform, and I can say value 2, I want to increase the velocity. So value 2 in a MIDI note message, value 1 is pitch, value 2 is down velocity, and I want to now add 20 to the velocity values of all those notes between A1 and E1. Or we could set value 2 to say set random values between 90 and 1. We'll do 120. So now every A1 through E2 will have random velocity values between 90 and 120. So you could do stuff like that. You could also say, okay, I want to, let's say, just insert. And I could say, let's take value 1 and add 24. If I did this right, I could just copy those notes up 2 octaves within that particular range as well to kind of create different interesting layers. So a couple of things you could do with selecting specific notes, and think of the logical editor as being more for MIDI, and that was kind of the genesis of the whole idea. And the project logical editor is more for dealing with automation and track names and routing and colorizing different elements. All right, so we see question, is there a passive EQ in Cubase like Puig Tech? So I think, I'm not sure if that's what you specifically mean by passive. Usually an active EQ has kind of active circuits on it, to boost or cut. I know that, sometimes you may, like on, when I think of kind of active EQ, I think, as a bass player, I often will think of, like active electronics that kind of boost the signal. So I don't know of a particular kind of passive EQ, or what would differentiate the passive EQ sonically from the normal EQ on a particular track. But, I think that, a lot of times you would use an active EQ to get more of a boost, where, if you wanted to have a limited, amount of boost, like let's say you have a tone knob in a guitar that may be like, 6 dB of gain or cut at a particular frequency, but you could increment those in smaller amounts. But let me know if I'm misunderstanding. See, Value just says, thanks for all your help in the last months. It's been a pleasurable journey. I hope to continue. So yeah, we'll be doing these live streams for a long time. All right, Gareth is going to have his Project Logical Editor weekend this summer. So, and Michael Teams as well. Nick wants to know if he could bring a bottle to the Project Logical Editor event. So, okay. Okay, so you see Kevin just commenting about the metadata feature in Wavelab. Says meant to say adding your own picture. What will that show up in iTunes when you use it? So the metadata shows up and how to tag your own picture. So yeah, so that will be what will show up as what is extracted from the streaming services. All right, so you see Gareth clarified values, just asking for like a pull text type EQ. So there currently isn't one in there, but I think that you could kind of get the same functionality using kind of the standard or, using the standard or like frequency. And you see Jazz Dude's not a fan because of phase shifting. All right, so we got Tiago checking in from Brazil. Glad to see you on the Zoom meetup on Tuesday. All right, we'll see if there's other questions that come up. We're at the end of questions. We'll see if there's any more that kind of sneak in. And there's usually about a 20 to 30 second pause between when questions are asked to when I see that, when you guys hear me. See Jazz Dude just about Pultec EQs says old solutions from World War II are not better. Yeah, sometimes people cherish the anomalies of equipment a bit too much. So. All right, you see Garrett just says phase shifting is minimized using the minimum phase setting and frequency, but be careful of pre-ringing and bass transient frequencies like for kick. All right, so we see Tiago has one question. Okay, so Tiago just is having the status bar in the project window appears randomly. All right, so if we go to our setup window, we can see our status bar here. So I've never had that. Do you actually see, like, are you starting perhaps from a template? If so, does the template have the status bar turned on? So let me just save a quick template and see if that's preserved. I'm pretty sure it would be preserved. And it could also be let's see, if you go to your key commands, let's say if we have, let's see if this shows up. Check if you go into window zones, if maybe there's like a keyboard shortcut that you have set for here. And, it could be that a particular keyboard shortcut is assigned to two different functions, and when you turn it on for something else, that it's also activating the status line. But I haven't really come across that, and I'm not sure if it's like while you're working, then the status bar is like while you're recording, the status bar turns on, or if you're actually initiating the concept. So maybe if you can see in the window zones, if you have the show hide status, if you have a key command set for that, then maybe you're accidentally turning it on and off with a key command. All right, then I see Tiago just comment, no key commands assigned, Cubase Pro 12, Windows 10. It says both on his PC and laptop. Okay, so he says while he's working, this happens. All right, so we see club to breathe just as a status bar can happen because you have input output not connected. Thus, no matter if you uncheck the status bar, it'll come up whenever you do something new. And he's from Brazil as well. All right, so let's say if we so let's say if I have input and output not connected. And I'll just turn off my control room. I'll set this to, I'll bypass my control room. And then I'll turn this off, turn my status bar off. Do new project, and we'll see just what status bar is turned on. All right, so let's say if I go to my VST connections now. And I'll set my inputs. And before I do this, let me just turn it off. So it looks like it's turned on, but I haven't seen it, but maybe you could check what Club for Breathe just mentioned. All right, let's see if there's, you see that see Benny just says never get tired of Cubase. We have Nick who's wishing everyone excuse me, let me clear my throat. So you see Nick wishing everyone a wonderful weekend. All right, we'll see if there's any other questions that come up. If not, we'll wrap up a little early. All right, wonderful to see Graham Witcher from Royal Wooten Bassett on the live stream. All right. We'll wait another minute or so. If no more questions, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. All right, wait just a little longer, see if there's any other questions to sneak in. I know people are joining late. All right, so I guess we are out of questions. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful questions. I hope that everyone has learned a new tip or trick. And if you have, all right, so we see. All right, and we see the Club to Breathe just says you can save the info line status bar the way you want by using templates. Then you can check your inputs and outputs to be on. This was the only way you could get rid of the info line. So all right, so everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we will see everyone on Tuesday. I'll hopefully get our email forwarding sorted out next week. I apologize for that. And and also on the 16th is the last day of school for my son, and that's going to be a Friday 2 weeks from today. And I want to do 2 live streams that week. So if you could maybe leave in the comments if you'd like to do a live stream maybe on the Thursday of the 15th of June as opposed to the 16th, so we could have 2 live streams. So maybe just leave a quick message if you want to see, and I'll ask in other live streams so people can think about it, if a Thursday live stream would be okay for June 15th as opposed to Friday the 16th, so I could do some after last day of school stuff with my son. So let me know if that would work for people. All right, and with that, we'll go ahead. Okay, so we see Benny saying the 15th is okay. Okay, so we see got your, just says MIDI Remote, why won't it import back in right? So when I've exported my MIDI Remotes, let's come over, I'll just try, let me just go back to my MIDI Remote here. And let's see if I could. Let's enable this. All right, so I have my choice sauce controller. I'm going to assign this to my quick controls here. Okay, so now I have this assigned. I will go back to my scripting page here. Oops, sorry, wrong page. And we'll go to our scripts. And let's export the script. All right, so we'll call it a Choy Sauce 100 MIDI Remote, and it'll be going into Documents. I'll put it onto my desktop here. I will go ahead and delete the Choy Sauce controller. So let's go ahead and import the script. Let's get to my Choy Sauce. And it looks like that imported correctly to me. So let me know if I did something differently than you did. Okay, so we see the 15th is okay. Okay, so you see John Koskian thanking Jazz Dude, Agent K, Jan, and everyone for the detailed schooling. And he thought his brain was full. And special thanks to Ted Perlman for the Zoom meetup. Okay, so we see Bruce saying Thursday be fine. Okay. Okay, with that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Everyone, please have a wonderful weekend. Everyone stay safe and healthy, and we'll see everyone back on Tuesday. And we'll aim for the 15th, and I'll just kind of keep reminding people that we'll be doing the 15th as opposed to the 16th. But everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you on Tuesday. Thank you so much. Goodbye.